Hello and welcome. We are here today to talk about launching kids into the world and what birth has to do with how they approach that monumental task of leaving home, wherever they are in the process. And this could be kids who are still at home. This could be kids who have flirted a little bit with leaving and then have come back. This can be kids who have just leapt, but yet they're still very much in contact. They're not quite ready. So if you and your family falls into any of these categories, you are in the right place, and we're so glad that you are here. So I'm Rebecca Thompson Hit, and I'm here with Jen Gerardy, and we're going to take a minute and just talk about why this topic is so important for us. Jen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot. And one of the things that I've thought about is that, in my career so far, I've worked with quite a few young adults who are on that cusp themselves. And typically, when I work with a young adult, they're coming for help in a lot of cases because their parents don't get their experience, and sometimes that's in really big ways, like they've been kicked out of the house for being queer or something like that. But sometimes it's in smaller ways where they're like, I know my mom cares, but she doesn't get it. And so they're trying to figure out how to be an adult and how to be themselves and how to survive in 2025 or 2024 or whenever I've worked with them.
Whatever the year is.
And and, and it's a lot and it's hard and they just really want to have a nourishing relationship with the parent. But in that case, I'm not working with the parent, so I have this very one-sided part that I can help with. And in my career, I've worked with a lot of people who are parents to teens and young adults, where I'm not also working with the teen. And I have so much empathy for the perspective of the parent, is like, I have so much lived experience that my child doesn't have. I have seen how some of these decisions they're making don't end up well, or I have fear about how their identities are going to be perceived in the world and are they going to be safe? And I just want them to be safe and I just want to be in connection with them and I don't want to fight and I don't know how to support them without just like ignoring my own concerns, right? Which is also an incredibly valid perspective. But again, if I'm not working with the young adult, I there's only so much that I can do. And I love this so much because it's an opportunity for both of those experiences to be held with compassion and empathy and love. And because both people are working on their part, there's so much more opportunity for that to actually lead to mending and repair in the relationship and an adult adult relationship, because this transition from adult child to adult adult relationship is messy and
Yes.
hard.
Yes.
And we don't get good blueprints for it because our societal messaging is either like you stay tied to your apron strings your whole life or you just go off into the world on your own with no support.
At
We have
18.
we have nothing for like, what does it look like to negotiate that in connection with each other and supporting each other? And so that's why I'm passionate about this. And I'll also just very briefly say that personally, I launched myself because I did not have a healthy relationship with my parents. And my really only option was to break that off entirely. And that is another piece that I don't want that for you. It didn't have to be that way for me,
Yeah.
but it requires two people willing to work on it for it to be otherwise.
Right.
And if you're joining this course together, you are two people willing to work on it.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for sharing, Jen. I feel very excited and inspired just listening to what you just said. Yes, yes, yes. I so I am here because I have two young adults who launched last year. And so I just went through this process and I have been working with parents much like Jen, working with parents and trying to help them, support their transitioning young adults. And I also work with a lot of young adults who are, struggling with their transition for one reason or another. And I just, and sometimes I'm working with both at the same time. I'm working with the parent and then I'm working with the child individually. And I just keep thinking, if you both had the same information, and you could get on the same page and have some different words to talk about what's happening or understand what's happening, or to be around other people who are also going through the same transitions. So, parents being around other parents who are trying to do this differently, who want to stay connected to their kids, who want them to go out into the world in a healthy way, but also still want to be available, want to be that layer of support for them in whatever it looks like. If you're around other parents, or if you're not around other parents, or if you're only around other parents who are trying to do it the way that it was done for you, that you don't want for your kids, how do we do it differently? So, same thing for the young adults. If you have other people, because every single young adult I talk to is like, I'm the only one who's struggling in this way. I'm the only one. I'm the only one. Why am I not further ahead? Why am I not, why am I struggling with this particular step? Why don't I know what it looks like? Because it seems like all of my peers already know what it looks like, or what they're doing, or they've got their lives figured out, or they've already finished college and I haven't started. There's all of these things that are happening, and they feel like they're the only one. And I listen to young adults pretty much every single day saying pretty much the same things. And so it's like, if we could get all of you all together and get all of you all together, and you all have the same information and support, you all have support. I've heard so many things from young adults. I really wish my parent had more support. I can't tell you how many times it would make me feel so much better if my parent had more support, because they feel it when you don't have enough support. And I could see the visible relief on my clients' faces when I said, this is an option. They're like, oh my God, you could support my mother, you could support my parents, you could support my dad. So we want that for you. Um, when I transitioned last year with my kids, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about their transition, um, it was it's like, the reality is their transition happened really fast, but we've been preparing for this for quite a long time. And so when it happened, while it was a bit of a surprise in the timing and how it went, it also was something that I think we were all on, as much as you can be, ready for. And I want that for people. And we've continued to be in conversation and in touch. And when my kids need me, they can reach back out, but they're living on their own. And so it's like, that's possible. It's possible to do. And part of it is being really curious about what's going on for them and what it is that they need, and then what it is that you need as a parent. And so we want to help create this space where you can find what it is that you need, your child can find what they need. And yeah, so that's why we're here and why we are having these conversations. And so I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you. Just, it's not very long, few slides, just to give you some context for how we're looking at these birth imprints and how they show up. So, what does birth have to do with moving into the world? It has a lot. It is not everything. And I will say that what I understand about birth imprints is that it's the way we come in creates imprints in our nervous system that we repeat over and over and over and over again. And we repeat them in transitions. We repeat them during our milestones. And it shows up sometimes hundreds of times in a day. And so it is reinforced over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. There's the expression, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I think that that's actually talking about birth imprints. And so when we can understand what it is that what the story is that's being shown by our kids and also by ourselves, and how those patterns interact. Jen, last year I was thinking about how you did the intersection, and it was looking at where your birth imprints intersect with your child's imprints when you're trying to do anything. And I know that that was a mind-blowing experience for the people who participated in it. Like, oh my gosh, look at this. I didn't see all these different ways. So it shows up all the time. But it becomes really apparent the ways that you may have missed each other when you come to these big developmental milestones. So, so transitions, really briefly. Transitions, anytime you move from one task to another task is a transition. We often, and I often use the transition of leaving the house as an example. You know, if you're trying to move from inside of the house to the car, or from the car into a shopping center or the grocery store. That's a transition. Milestones are big developmental shifts. So a milestone is, this is actually a picture of me with the hands. I think that's my grandmother. Um, the developmental milestone of standing, of crawling, of walking, of talking, going to kindergarten or going into care of someone else whenever that happens. And then if you transition schools, if you move, and then when you leave home, but also when you get married, all of these things are all big developmental shifts. And so the way that we approach transitions and milestones often has to do with the sequence in our nervous system. So the sequence is what we repeat over and over again. And I'm going to give you a video by Ray Castellino, my mentor, and he's going to talk us through the sequence of birth. So and many of you have heard this story, but when I was first learning about imprints, I asked my mentor, Ray Castellino, about, well, how would I know? And so he said, all right, well, think about, what happened in your child's birth and then say, oh, we're going somewhere in 10 minutes and just watch what happens. And I would encourage you to do the same. When it's time to leave the house, think about what happens. What happens every single time. So for and I'm just gonna do I think I'm just gonna do my oldest son's story here because just for time, and then I'll go into more of these stories in the class. But so my oldest son, and when I first did this experiment where I said it's time to go somewhere, I looked over at the door and he was standing at the door already after I said we're leaving in 10 minutes, and he was tapping his foot, like literally tapping his foot, saying, when are we going to leave? Are we going? When are we going to go? And my youngest, after 10 minutes, I walked away. I came back. My youngest was still in his pajamas saying, are we going somewhere? And playing with Legos on the floor. And that's really how they came into the world. My oldest went into preterm labor at 32 weeks. And so he was like, all right, ready to go somewhere. I'm ready to go somewhere. And they stopped the labor. And then at 40 weeks, it was like, okay, it's time to come. My water broke and labor didn't start and I had to be induced. And so that's really like the way that I've also seen him move into the world. He'll think about things for really, 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 really long time. There's processing that's going on. There's a story that's emerging for him, and he's experimenting with different things. And then when it's time, he just jumps. He just goes. And so that's really what happened last year. We were having all these conversations, and he had gone out and, had lived in the US and gotten a job, came back to Mexico, went out, lived with my parents actually, and was apprenticing with my youngest brother for a little while, and then jumped out of that. That wasn't working. And last year, when it was like, all right, the cards all aligned, everything fell in place, and literally he was supposed to come. They were both my boys were supposed to come like a week and a half after I had arrived in Florida, and I was at the airport getting my rental car, and they booked a flight for 2 days later. It was like, no, 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 we're going. We're going. And so in that imprint pattern, there is this long period of waiting and waiting and watching and being curious. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's time, let's go. So that's what I see for him. Yeah. So I want to talk about the sequence in the nervous system. The first part of this video, you can hear Ray talking, and he's a little bit quieter, but the video didn't shift off of me. And so you'll see me watching him really nodding in like, yes, this is because I relate to everything he was saying here. So let me know if you can hear
Have you
this.
ever
You hear it?
waited till the last minute before you got the paper done and have it get it in um, to turn it in, or do you get halfway through something and you kind of get disoriented and lose track of what you're doing and have a hard time getting back to it, or you want to start something and you can't kind of get started. You think about it and think about it, think about it, think about it, and it just never gets off the ground. And then, or you are with an intimate other, somebody close to you, and you get like 1/4 of the way into the conversation and one of you starts to back out of it and you lose your capacity to engage each other, or you kind of like another pattern is you get angry at the same time. Sequencing is and when the sequencing is really a significant factor in all of our lives, and every one of us keeps repeating the same patterns over and over and over again. So what we're talking about here is something that is relevant to everyone. A nursing mom, for example, might begin to nurse. Maybe they've established nursing, and then there's a particular place as the baby's coming toward the breast or getting on the breast where the baby starts to activate or cry and then backs away, and you have to do a dance to settle down so that the baby can get on. And you keep seeing that happening at the same time. It's really important for all of us as parents and people to understand our own sequencing imprints, and especially to understand our loved ones and imprints and sequencing imprints and our children's. It gives us the opportunity to reduce our stress levels by some great magnitude. I don't know how much, but I've seen this a lot. I started thinking about sequencing from two places and just a little history on it. But I started thinking about sequencing when I was in chiropractic school, and we were studying kinesiology. And it turns out that every movement has a sequence. So like there's an intention phase. This is right out of kinesiological science now. There's an intention phase. There's a preparation phase. There's the action phase. There's a follow-through phase, and there's an integration phase. It's a 5-fold sequence. That's in kinesiology. So if you're going to throw a ball, I should have a ball here, or throw a pillow. I pick the pillow up, and I have an intention to throw it. Now, if you were here, I'd throw it to you, but we're not going to get across the the web barrier here. So I pick the pillow up. I've got an intention to throw the pillow. So then as I go up, I'm doing the preparation phase now. You can see it's going back. And then I throw the pillow. That's the action phase. And then my arm follows through. That's the follow-through phase. And then I do it in slow motion now. And then there's the integration phase. Every movement has those sequences. It's a 5-fold piece. So I thought, wow. And then I started watching people and how they moved. And they start to, they'll maybe hesitate at a particular place that they'll get it. You see, watch their eyes, they get a little disoriented in the intention phase. And then, oh, okay, I'm supposed to throw the ball or throw the pillow. And then they get back, and different places in the sequences, their ability to just get it, wind up and throw gets interrupted. I said, okay, then what's the cause of those interruptions in the movement? Now, just as much as I said so far, everybody, we want to support our kids to be well coordinated. And babies and young children have to master the physical world first. Is before you get into thinking about things and abstracting things and all that. They've got to get into their body and be able to move well. And there's all kinds of things that happen that interrupt and leave imprints in the sequencing of either baby in the womb or at birth or a young child. So in thinking about the cause, there's multiple causes, but one of the primary places that has profound influence that we've learned from watching a lot of families in Beba and working with Mary Jackson and about connections with birth and infants and working with adults in womb surrounds where we get to see how a person plays out their sequencing. So one of the primary imprint places that we find is the birth process itself. So when we look at birth, we look at intention, we look at preparation, we look at the birth itself, we look at post-birth, and we look at integration, and we look at the birth as a sequence. So birth has a before the beginning. I'm going to shift the language now. Before the beginning, a middle, and like maybe you can call that transition, an end, the birth itself, and then what happens after birth, the birth of the placenta, the baby resting, baby skin to skin, mom, baby, family connecting, maybe nursing, maybe story showing. So there's a five-fold sequence: before, the beginning. Now we think that the before is all the preparation. If we look at the baby's head, and let's say the baby's coming vertex, head first, then when the baby's head engages in the mom's pelvis, this is now, I'm looking at it in a totally different way, not looking at the phases of birth, the traditional phases of birth, but I'm borrowing from some of William Emerson's really fine work. And so then the baby's head engages, and maybe there's labor or not, but the baby's head engaging in the mom's pelvis is like maybe the beginning. And then labor happens, and then birth happens, and then what happens afterward. If you just look at that, and you look at where interruptions to that sequence happens, that can bring about an imprint on that person, that wherever that interruption happens in the sequence, they'll repeat, and they'll repeat by creating an interruption in the same place in their own sequencing whenever they're doing anything. And it can happen many, many, many times a day. And I know this because I've done an experiment with over 400 people. I've done all the tabulations. So we give our students an assignment to do where they track themselves through a defined event, like going to a concert or taking a weekend vacation, or just what happens to them before, at the beginning, the middle, the end, and afterward. Have you ever waited till the last minute before?
It's a great exercise that I would highly recommend doing, like tracking yourself. Notice if you are doing something that's different than you normally do. Like for some people going on a trip, they have a routine. They've figured out how to compensate. And for some people, they rarely go on a trip. So notice what you do. If you're going someplace new, notice. And same, if you're a young adult listening to this, it's a really great opportunity to learn something about yourself. So your child's birth sequence and imprints show up in this way. So what do you notice about your child's sequence? Where do they get stuck when it's time to do something? So do they plan? Do they struggle to get started? Do they get disoriented in the middle? That one's mine. Do they speed up or stop at the end? Sometimes I stop. Do they skip resting and go straight to the next task? Yes, I do that. Um, just, to be completely transparent. Like, this is not like, it's all fixed. However, you learn how to navigate these imprints. And I know now when I'm stuck, I don't create a story about how terrible I am because I didn't finish that thing. I understand it's my imprint and I know I need more support. Like, I know what I need. So, which parts are easy for them? What do you notice? Some kids are just like, let's go, let's start. And they're really good if it's a short task, clear beginning, middle, end. They do great. But if it's a task where there's lots of parts, they get disoriented. Notice, what do you notice? Do they plow through tasks or do they take a long time to do anything? How does it show up for them? Because how we do one thing is how we do everything, and how we leave home also is going to show up in this as well. So, and when our kids are moving into the world, how can it show up? So is your child planning what is coming next? Is your child able to get started with the first steps? Do they begin and then become disoriented in the middle? Do they begin and keep going even if it's not working well? Do they speed up or stop at the end? There's another pattern that I see, especially with babies who were in the NICU, is that often at the end there was pain. So in the sequence, I often see with NICU babies that they may initiate, may like head straight into something, but then they need to inflict some kind of pain on themselves or in their circumstances in this rest and integration phase where there was pain for them. So they're repeating that. And so that's just, there's so many patterns and so many ways that this shows up. And it's not as simple as your child was born this way and so it's going to be blank. It's paying attention, being curious. What do you see over and over again? And so this sequence can show up in small steps, like I'm thinking about going to college, or I need to do a paper, or in the bigger leaps, like I'm ready to leave home. It's how is that showing up for your child? And then if you understand what the sequence is, what it is, and where they're getting stuck, then you can work with them to one, identify what it is that their sequence is, where they are, where they're struggling, and then what is it that you're needing in this place? Because we can repattern these things. It doesn't make it go away, but we can approach it in a completely different way. So you can, like I just said, support your child in understanding their birth imprints, share what you observe in concrete steps with permission. So, like, I'm noticing something when you are preparing to do this college application. I'm noticing, is it okay if I share? And then you may say very concretely, I saw you get started and I saw you were really excited and then I saw something fall off. I wonder what happened for you there. And I see that frequently, like you start something, but then something happens. And there's usually judgment around that for the child, for the adult child, the young adult, because it's the story they're telling them that there's something wrong with them. And it's actually just their imprint. And when we take that out, it opens up other possibilities. So slow things down when there's tension. Often we tend to speed up, oh my God, you're not understanding. And especially if it hits one of our imprints in our own sequence, then we may all speed up together. So slow down. And remember that you have your own birth imprint that may or may not be the same as your child's. So go gentle, go slowly, slower, slower than that. Slow it way down because otherwise you're just going to keep repeating the same things. Support your child to master what they need to be able to move through the sequence with support and eventually on their own. And I can see that with my boys. You know, if it's a really big thing, they may still like tap in. Like yesterday, I had conversations with my oldest about a process that he's in. So he knows he can navigate most of it, but occasionally he'll need a little extra support and he knows how to ask for it. Encourage understanding and curiosity. It will help them to master it more quickly if they feel your support. And that's again why we're doing this together. If everybody can be on the same page, then we can make it different. And this is the beginning. This is this much about what we want to talk about in Launching with Love. Birth imprints are just one part. This is the primary layer. It's a foundational pattern. Understanding imprints helps all of us to see new solutions when we're struggling or when your child is struggling and what you're doing isn't working. So if you want to learn more and deepen your understanding of how you can support your child to move into the world, we have Launching with Love coming up next week. There's 2 groups, one for parents, one for young adults. Content is the same, but discussions are going to be totally different in each group. And it's 13 weeks to support you to launch with ease and connection. And again, you don't have to have a child who is launching in 13 weeks to participate. This is for anybody wherever you are in this process to increase your connection with each other, understanding of each other while you're navigating this milestone in your life. So I will send you all the link. You can look at all of the things that we have planned for our 13 weeks together. It's really comprehensive. It covers things from you know, your imprints like we're talking about today. It also talks about boundaries and feelings and needs and assessing skills, life skills. What skills do they have and not have? Communication skills, listening, reflecting, I statements, all of these things that we think are so important, and roommates and dating with, you know, boundaries with dating and boundaries with, you know, and codependence and all of these things that have been coming up with my clients and I know Jen's clients as well. So we would love to have you and, you know, let us know if you've got questions, let us know what you're needing. And we would love the opportunity to support you in this really important developmental milestone for not only your older teens or young adults, but also for you as a parent. Yeah, let's do this differently.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Excited to see all of the big generational changes that come from doing this work together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just end with I did not grow up with this, and I just did it with my kids. And if I can do it, so can you. Yeah. All right. Hopefully, we will see you next week. Let us know your questions, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Bye.